In what is said to be a bold move to curb Uganda's rising road carnage, the Ministry of Works and Transport, in conjunction with the Uganda Police, are rolling out the Automated Express Penalty System, also known as EPS Auto, a digital enforcement tool that enforces traffic laws using CCTV cameras and digital number plates detecting violations like speeding and red light running. Another feature under this system facilitates e-fines to be sent to the registered vehicle owners via SMS or email. Along with details on the offense, the fine amount and payment must be made within 72 hours. However, the EPS Auto system has faced criticism from various stakeholders, primarily due to concerns about the high penalties, short payment deadlines, and potential for injustice. Some argue that the fines are excessive, particularly for low-income earners and long-distance drivers, and that the 72-hour payment deadline is unrealistic for many. How will this system work? This is The Limelight. Well, good evening and welcome to the program. This is The Limelight. My name is Prince Apollo, and on the show this evening, we host Mr. Timothy Chemonges, and Timothy is an executive member of the Road Safety Advocacy Coalition in Uganda, a coalition of road safety advocates with the common goal of reducing road crashes in Uganda. Welcome to the program, Timothy.
Thank you so much, Ndugu Apollo. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you. Let's go straight to the topic this evening, Timothy. Looking at the implementation of the automated express penalty system in Uganda, what is your personal view as in how far this system will curb or reduce on road accidents in Uganda?
So thank you so much. So I should start by saying that the magnitude of road crashes in Uganda, and as evident, has increased over the years. Today, as according to the report by the Uganda police, we lose at least 14 people on our roads daily. The total loss amalgamated in terms of the total amount of money arising from road crashes and fatalities, we lose up to 5% of our total GDP. That goes into managing and facilitating whatever happens in our hospitals, the indirect costs that arise of these road crashes, but also including the indirect costs of when you have a family, a head of family who is a breadwinner, dying. The rest of the family's members get greatly affected. So when you look at that magnitude, but also extending to the economy of the country, it means that road crashes, the question of fatalities in our country, has greatly, and it's extremely expensive. Now, coming to the automated system as a mechanism to ensure that road safety is adhered to, I think that as a country, if there are mechanism or if there are anything that needs to be done to address these challenges, and there are definitely efforts that are already ongoing, this of the automated system is one of them, which I think it's a brilliant idea. Just to ensure that we are able to regulate, but also embrace the use of machines, the use of technology to regulating and ensuring that the framework around our transport system, our usage of road is enhanced, which is a very, very important thing. And more importantly, I think that I must emphasize that the number of our traffic officers who are on the roads are not so many. In fact, the traffic officers are outnumbered. And so the need to embrace and include technology to enabling this system to ensure that there is a better adherence levels, but also the public is able to adhere to most of these frameworks is very, very important. So I think that it is, in principle, for me, where I stand, it's a brilliant idea. we need to roll it out further. We need to address the challenges that are coming in as a result of rolling this system. Definitely, I think that there could be concerns from different stakeholders, but in principle, the direction we are taking is a good direction.
As traffic police rolls out this system, there are concerns emerging, especially on the penalties and fines that are slapped to errant road users. What is your view?
So I think that, first of all, again, referring to the magnitude of the challenge that we are dealing with, the problem that we are dealing with, first of all, is extremely high and extremely expensive to the country. Now, the punitive, the penalties that have been proposed and the ones that are being implemented may appear to be high, but in comparison to the challenge that we are dealing with, I think that the whole strategy is to make it as punitive as possible. And I agree. I think for me, again, is to say that we must make the cost of impunity in the country extremely high. That anyone who thinks of actually going against the law should actually think twice. Apollo, I should bring you maybe to your attention that one of the biggest challenges that we are facing in this country is the question of implementation of laws. We have sufficient policies, we have sufficient laws in our country. Just to maybe highlight still around the work on road safety, together with the Ministry of Works, we've been able to put in place quite a number of policies. Among them is a policy on the use of a drink and drive, a policy around now speed, which is one of the regulations. There is a regulation around the helmet use and other regulations, including one of using the child restraint. Child restraint is when you have minors and children using the vehicles. Sometimes we are tempted to imagine that they can fit in the seat of a car, yet it caters for an adult, and therefore there is need to have like child restraints to enable the children use. So in terms of policy and the framework in there, there's been an excellent work done. We have a problem in implementing and having our laws actualized, and that's where we have
So you think the penalties are appropriate and they will serve as a deterrent measure to those who want to violate traffic guidelines?
Absolutely. I think for me, the component is having laws as deterrent as possible, as punitive as possible, to ensure that it's extremely, like any thought to actually go against this, thinks twice. Of course, I agree that the laws are not cast in stone. And that if there are concerns, because these are just being rolled out, I think that we should allow for it to be tested and see and review it after, and just like any other laws. And I think that for policymakers, they are not as because also they are also road users, and reviewing many of these laws after a period of time is highly effective. However, I think that because you see, we are dealing with a very big problem, Apollo. And that if you've had a family member lost a life, lost a limb, or lost a body part as a result of
road crashes,
I think that it should come closer home to that. We have to provide and Apollo, I should say that when you look at the speed regulations, it provides speed limits according to areas. There is no standard for the 30 kilometers per hour speed. It covers largely urban areas around hospitals, around schools, and some of those other areas, just to ensure that these are critical areas that do not require high speed. We've recently lost a very promising but also a very important person in our country. That's the late Rajiv. May his soul rest in peace. And part of the concern was the factor of speeding, which is a big issue. And so I think the question of most of this should be able to be addressed within that context. Where we are losing a lot, we are losing quite a significant amount of of resources, quite a number of people, and majority are young people, referring to the police report.
Well, talking about speed limit, as in urban areas, the speed limit is 30 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
And critics say this is almost a snail. I mean, vehicles will be traveling at a snail pace. I mean, this is so slow, and eventually it may also result into unnecessary traffic jams and other things.
So, Apple, I should start also on this specific question, start by saying that this is not a Ugandan standard. This is a global standard. A global standard even in countries that have proper infrastructure. In critical areas, in places that attract quite a big number of people, the speed must be regulated, and it's a global standard. This is not a unique to Uganda, and most of the global standards that have been set in most of those international frameworks is 30 kilometers. Also, I should also refer to the kind of infrastructure that we have. So, a picture, for example, and maybe I should bring this picture to our audience. Let's say Kampala City. Looking at the infrastructure, the congestions, we are having one lane. We are still, as a country, operating in one lane. Other countries are actually moving towards 2 lane. We are operating in one lane.
Yeah, but that is actually the concern.
Yeah.
That with narrow roads and roads that are also infested with potholes, then you set a speed of 30 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
Then this will cause unnecessary delays and possibly people will sleep on the road before they reach home.
That's true, because you see, I think that people are already sleeping. It's not that they are not sleeping. I'm not so sure if any of us who drives along, let's say, Kampala, for example, and I know our audience, there are those in other urban areas, Soroti, Mbarara, Gulu, and the other areas, where you see that for many times, actually, out of 10 times, most likely, maybe it's one time, maybe during night, when you're able to have clear access to these roads. For many times there is jam, there are vehicles, because of the roads. We have a fundamental problem also in terms of how our roads are designed. Yeah, in terms of how our roads are designed. But far from it, Apollo, you see, if you look at the police, the annual report, annual crimes report by the Uganda police, including the most recent of 2024, the biggest and the leading causes of road crashes is human error. Of course, human error is broad.
Yeah.
Human error would
reckless driving,
overspeeding, drinking while eating, while driving, and the likes, which is a human error. Now, because of that, actually the report further goes to say that whereas there could be challenges on the infrastructure and the state of our roads, that comes actually secondary. It's not the primary. The primary is how we choose to behave on our roads. Now, I think that the most of this should be actually be contextualized, and being in a country like Uganda, for me, I think this should actually come closer. The number of times a person in Kampala here or in any of these urban areas having driven in 30 kilometers per hour, there are very few times. So I don't see a situation where we will have people sleeping. For me, I think that we ought, first of all, the driving principle in any of our engagement should be, and paramount at that, is safety on our roads. What should be our driving component? I think it's around safety on our roads. Yeah, and that should be, because we are in a state and we are in a place where, as a country, if we do not take precise and effective measures, we are likely to actually lose a big number of our people on things that can be avoided.
As a policy analyst, Timo, what could be your concern as far as implementation of this system is concerned? And anyway, were you people consulted? You the stakeholders, were you consulted before? I mean, in the formulation of these policies and prior to implementation?
So, first of all, I think that there were consultations, definitely. Consultations were there. We can discuss the extent of extension of the consultations, but I think there were sufficient consultations with very clear target of individuals contributing to most of these regulations. I actually should say that my interaction, I've worked together with quite a number of ministries, but I find Ministry of Works quite open-minded to engaging, but also to seeing how collaboratively solutions can be found in addressing the challenges of our roads. Because you see, the road sector is facing quite a number of challenges, and we can discuss this for as long as the day we're still here. But I think that there are challenges towards the question of financing. Again, financing also going into ensuring that the individuals enforcing have sufficient resources, have sufficient equipments. There are also sufficient
equipments. You're talking about like speed guns,
even the gears that would be used by the officers, and many of these, to ensure that there is effective implementation, there is effective adherence to the laws. Financing towards the question of awareness, really. Again, because you see, ultimately, if one of the reasons as to why we have leading causes as a human error, then it speaks to the fact that there's a mismatch between the heart and the action. So there's need for more awareness. There's need for us to engage the people further. There's need to elaborate further the issues at hand. So that then, and this is not to say that people are not aware. It's not to say that people are not aware if I overspeed, I may likely cause a road crash. They are aware. Now, there's the first point where you say, if you overspeed, if you do this is the consequence. But also further, because it's much more easier if people are self-regulating. They are aware as to this kind of things, so that you reduce the burden and the work that the officers would be overseeing. And I think that also extends to the conversation that we started. Given the number of officers that we have, in ensuring that we could bring more on board to support the work. The number is still not as ideal, extending to the question of financing, and therefore the bringing on board the issue of technology, the issue of artificial intelligence as a mechanism. And this is not unique to Uganda. We've seen this even to some of our neighbors, like Rwanda and the other countries. They've already started implementing this. We can discuss on what it looks like, how much punitive should the law look like. But I think that the direction that we are taking, we are really late to getting that to where we should be.
All right. Talking about sensitization, do you, in your opinion, think the road users have been sensitized adequately in order to also cooperate and appreciate the benefits and the objectives behind this campaign?
No, so first of all, when you look at the implementation of these laws, so we under the road safety work that we do together with the Ministry of Works and Transport. So we have the National Action Plan. So the National Action Plan embodies all the laws, the policies that are adhered towards road safety. And the National Action Plan clearly sets what should be done, how this should be realized, the question of awareness, identifying the different stakeholders, and deploying the different tasks and responsibilities to be done with a very clear monitoring and evaluation framework. Now, I should also say that sensitization is work in progress. I think that there is no one place you can reach and you're like, now we have the masses.
Yeah, but for instance, this this enforcement that has started on speed limit, do you think motorists have been adequately sensitized and have been provided with the necessary infrastructure? For instance, the speed signs that along this stretch of road to 30 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
And I'm also talking about road users that maybe have come from up country, come from abroad, visitors in this country. Are we really ready for this policy?
No, my assessment is not yet. I think that in light of what you mentioned, the signs, then the further engagement, the further awareness. I think there's still a lot of work to be done there. The speed regulation was just recently launched, and between then and now it's already in effect. So there is still a lot that requires to be done as far as sensitizing the people and just trying to ensure that people can be reached out. Of course, I agree that during the consultations there were quite a number of people that were consulted, especially with the coalitions and groups that bring together different groups. So you see, for example, you'll have the borders, who are a major stakeholder in this country, but also they contribute immensely to the economy of the country, but they also are the biggest victims to question of road crashes.
Yeah.
So we had, for example, quite a number of their would-be leaders consulted, but it's a sector that is fragmented and you don't know who is who. But also the ability of having that message trickle down, it's quite a big time challenge. So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I think again that goes up to government and the rest of us who are players in this sector. But it's lacking. The question of signs, I think it's not just about the speed of 30 kilometer and the other kilometers as provided for in the regulations. I think the signs it's a bigger picture really. There are even the other requirements that are provided for in the other
that's where there is a zebra crossing.
Yeah, the zebra crossing, having most of those very clear.
They must be clearly marked.
Absolutely. So it's a bigger issue, and it's not just limited to the speed regulation. So I think as we engage, as we push further, is to also ask Ministry of Works to ensure that most of these things are addressed. Otherwise, it also affects implementation, but also creates some level of resistance from the stakeholders.
Finally, from us here, what could be recommendations, especially to the implementers of this policy, so as to have the policy implemented effectively and fetching better results? Yeah.
So I think that first of all, most of this should be brought to the attention of the stakeholders. Ultimately, if you have the buy-in of the stakeholders, I know there's work that is already ongoing there and some of the work that has been done there, but I think there's need for more. Sensitization, engagement, and further engagement. Of course, concerns around resources by the Ministry of limited resources, but I think at the top of most of this is put in place a regulation, put in place a policy, ensure that stakeholders are aware, they understand of what this is about, and can be implemented. Secondly, ensure there is financing to this. Again, one of our biggest problems is we put in place a law without a financing framework. So what that means is that such a law cannot be implemented. Lastly, I think that there's need for a very clear there's need for a total review of the sector, because you see you have the borders, you have now the taxi owners and all the other stakeholders. Yet there is a problem. So I think even as because for me, I think that the border sector needs to be regulated further. I think looking at the road crashes that we have, I know they are doing an amazing job in the transport sector, but there's a lot of mess that comes from that area. So we must first of all reorganize that sector. The taxis, I think there is also need for us to transition to maybe slightly bigger motor vehicles, so that can decongest the city as it is today. There's a lot of mess in our road sector, and ensuring that also the public are on board as mentioned.
In just a few seconds, you did talk about the issue of corruption, because it has always been a challenge in matters of, areas of implementation of some of the policies in this country. I don't know if you hope this one, during the implementation of this policy, it won't be another huge challenge.
Corruption is so it's so entrenched in our system that sometimes any attempts to fight it can fight you back, and very rigorously. Again, the use of technology is one of the systems that I think government, not just in the road sector, is trying to employ, even in the procurement sector. The face-to-face has become a total mess.
To avoid and eliminate human interaction.
Yes, human interaction, to ensure that is limited, because that's where the gap is. And so the use of technology such as the system of e-ticketing is one of those that, from where I see today, because there are still challenges in having that fully rolled out, not just on the citizen side, but also on government, to ensure that you have this thing rolled out in Kampala and the other parts of the country. So I think this is a good step towards, first of all, ensuring that there's safety on our roads, the question of corruption, but also so that it would greatly also help in reorganizing the city. But to have this realized, I think that there is need for us to have a total review of the sector. Otherwise, the continued piecemeal interventions may take us, may help us to realize this, but for us to have safety on our roads, we have a total review of the sector and see where we are at, what needs to be done, and have clear political will to have most of these things done. The question of financing, very critical.
Thank you so much, Timothy, and thank you so much for those insights. Thank you so much, our viewers, and it is Timothy Chemonges. Timothy is an executive member of the Road Safety Advocacy Coalition Uganda, a coalition of road safety advocates with a common goal of reducing road crashes in Uganda. And to you, our viewers, now you know that the policy the new policy of e-ticketing and the penalties being sent directly to those errant road users has started, and we can only wait to see how it works out. But we must also be disciplined on the road and, of course, save lives, but also save lives, but also save our resources, because every time a ticket comes in, you must dig deep into your pocket, and that directly affects your incomes, affects your economic and financial position. My name is Prince Apollo. We'll catch up again next Friday in another edition of the Limelight. God bless you, and God bless Uganda.